Chapter 1, Two Ships. The Great Race began in the summer of 1910. On June 1st, in London, a black ship named the Odyssey sailed down the River Thames toward the open sea. Thousands of people lined the river banks to watch it go, their faces filled with excitement and happiness. On the deck of the Odyssey, Captain Robert Sterling offered a quiet smile. This was a monumental day for him. He was a man of solid build, not exceptionally tall, dressed in the sharp blue uniform of a captain. At 41, his face still held a boyish youthfulness, though his dark eyes were calm and serious. One of his officers, Lieutenant Lawrence Cole, smiled at him. "What an exciting day, Captain," he said, gesturing to the cheering crowds. "I feel like an important man." Sterling laughed. "You are important, Lawrence," he replied, "and you're going to be famous. We all are. Do you see this flag?" He glanced at the large British flag waving at the ship's stern. "That flag is coming with us. In the Antarctic, I'm going to carry it beneath my clothes. We will be the first men to reach the South Pole, and that flag will be there with us." 5 days later, on June 6, a man opened the door of his wooden house in Norway. He was a tall man with a long, weathered face. He paused outside for a moment, taking in the profound quiet. There were no other houses in sight, only mountains, dense forests, and the dark water of the fjord. The sky was turning black over the peaks as night approached. The man smiled and walked briskly down the path to the sea. In the water, a large wooden ship was waiting for him. He climbed aboard, where he was greeted with quiet laughs and conversation from his friends. The ship's name was the Viking, and the man was Magnus Eriksen. To Eriksen, the Viking was the most beautiful ship on Earth, and his friends were the finest skiers in the world. One of them, Bjorn Larsen, grinned at him. "North Pole, here we come, Captain," he said. "Yes," Eriksen replied, his face hidden in the shadows. His crew believed they were heading to the Arctic, ready to conquer the North Pole. Eriksen wanted to go there too, but he had a secret. First, he intended to go south. At midnight, the Viking slipped away from Eriksen's home and moved silently out to sea. Chapter 2. The race is on. The Viking sailed to a small island off the southern coast of Norway. It was a tiny piece of land holding only a single wooden house, 2 trees, and nearly 100 dogs. "Look at that," Larsen said. "It's an island of dogs. There in the water, near the trees, on the house, dogs everywhere." 2 men emerged from the house. "Hessel, Lindstrom," Eriksen called out. "It's good to see you. How many dogs do you have for me?" 99, Hassel replied. "The best 99 dogs from Greenland. And they are very happy. They don't work. They just eat and play all day. They're having a wonderful summer here." "Good, good," Eriksen laughed. "But that's finished now. Hey, Larsen, stop laughing and come help me. Let's get all these dogs onto the ship." It was not an easy task. The dogs were fat, strong, and had no desire to board the ship. After 3 hours of hard work, all 99 were finally aboard, and the Vikings set out to sea once more. The mood on the ship soured. The weather was foul, the dogs were dirty, and some of the men felt seasick. They began to voice their confusion. "Why are we bringing all these dogs with us?" asked one man, Johan Anderson. "We're going thousands of kilometers south, past Cape Horn, and then north to Alaska. Why not just get dogs in Alaska?" "Don't ask me," his friend Eric Jensen replied. "I don't understand it either." The men debated this for days. Then, on September 9th, Eriksen gathered everyone at the back of the ship. He stood before them, his expression serious. Behind him was a large map, but it was not a map of the Arctic. It was a map of Antarctica. Larsen glanced at Jensen and laughed, confused. Eriksen began to speak. "Boys," he said, "I know you are unhappy. You've asked difficult questions, and I haven't answered. Well, I am going to answer them now. We started preparing for this journey 2 years ago. Back then, we wanted to be the first men to the North Pole. But last year, Perry, an American, reached the North Pole. So, America was first, not Norway. We are going there, but we are too late. Larson was puzzled. Why is he talking about the North Pole with a map of Antarctica behind him? Eriksen paused, looking at each man. We have to travel a long way south before we reach Alaska, he continued. Very near Antarctica, you know. And Captain Sterling, the Englishman, is going to the South Pole this year. He wants to plant his British flag there, an American flag at the North Pole, a British flag at the South Pole. Larson began to understand. A wide grin spread across his face, and he couldn't stop it. He felt a surge of warmth and excitement. Well, boys, Eriksen said slowly, do we want the British to plant their flag at the South Pole first? How fast can we travel? We have a lot of dogs and some of the most wonderful skiers on Earth. Larson here is the best in Norway. So, I have an idea. Let's go to the South Pole and put the Norwegian flag there before the British. What do you say? For a moment, there was complete silence. Eriksen waited as the men watched him, their minds racing. Then Larson broke the silence with a laugh. Yes, why not? It's a ski race, isn't it? And the English can't ski. It's a brilliant idea. Of course, let's go. Chapter 3. The Ponies. On October 27th, the Odyssey arrived in Wellington, New Zealand. As Captain Sterling disembarked, a newspaper reporter approached him. Captain Sterling, may I have a word? Sterling paused and smiled politely. Yes, of course. What would you like to know? Are you going to win? The reporter asked bluntly. Win what? Sterling asked, confused. The race to the South Pole, of course. The reporter said, it's a race between you and Eriksen now. Look at this. He handed a newspaper to Sterling. Sterling looked at the headline. Eriksen races Sterling to South Pole. We're going to win, says Eriksen. Sterling's face turned pale. Give me that, he said sharply. He took the paper and read the article carefully, the reporter watching him intently. Well, Captain Sterling? The reporter finally pressed. Who's going to win this race? Tell me that. Sterling looked at him, his eyes flashing with anger. This is foolish, he said. It's not a race. I am here to conduct scientific study of the Antarctic. I am not interested in Mr. Eriksen or in races. He then turned and walked back onto his ship, the newspaper clutched in his hand. Later, he spoke to his men, showing them the newspaper but laughing it off. It doesn't matter, he said. We are ahead of Eriksen, and we have more men and more money. He has only 8 men and a pack of dogs. I know about dogs. They are not effective in the Antarctic. We have 16 men and the new motor sledges. They are far superior. And tomorrow, the ponies arrive. We need ponies, motor sledges, and good, strong British men. That's all. Forget about Eriksen. He is not important. Sterling had tasked Lieutenant Cole with looking after the ponies, but he hadn't allowed him to select them. When Cole first saw the animals in New Zealand, he was deeply concerned. Most of the ponies were old and several looked ill. They're beautiful ponies, Lawrence, Sterling said proudly. They come from China. Wonderful animals. Cole looked at them, his expression grim, and said nothing. Then he asked, where is their food, Captain? Here. Sterling opened a storage door. Cole looked inside, calculating for a moment. We need more food than this, Captain Sterling. These ponies are going to the coldest place on Earth. They will need a great deal of food, much more than this. Sterling smiled dismissively. We can't take more food on this ship, Lawrence. Where would we put it? But it doesn't matter, old boy. They are very strong ponies, you know, the best ponies on Earth. Later that night, Cole wrote a letter to his mother. There are 19 ponies on the Odyssey now, he wrote. They are all crammed into a small room at the front of the ship. We eat our meals in the room directly below them, so our table is often wet and dirty. I believe Sterling makes a lot of mistakes, and Antarctica is a very dangerous place. Chapter 4. Food depots. The two ships, the Odyssey and the Viking, arrived in Antarctica in January 1911, at the end of the southern summer. Both the Englishmen and the Norwegians planned to stay on the ice through the winter, preparing for their journey to the South Pole at the start of the next summer. The Norwegian dogs pulled the sledges with ease, running quickly over the snow as they hauled supplies from the ship to the ice. The men skied alongside them. They constructed a large wooden house, which they called Viking's Landing, and filled it with food, skis, and sledges. Outside, the dogs lived in cozy snow holes. Once the house was built, the men made their first journey south before winter set in. Their plan was to transport large amounts of food and leave it in depots for the long trek to the pole. On February 10th, 5 men, 3 sledges, 18 dogs, and half a ton of food left Viking's Landing. The journey was easy. The weather was relatively warm for Antarctica, between -7 and -17 degrees Celsius. The dogs and skis moved swiftly over the good snow, covering 50 or 60 kilometers each day. After 4 days, they reached 80 degrees south and established their first depot. Eriksen was meticulous. It was crucial to find these depots on the return journey. He placed a large black flag on top of the food cache. Then he planted 10 more flags to the east, each half a kilometer apart, and 10 flags to the west. This created a 10-kilometer-wide line of markers, making the depot impossible to miss. They returned to Viking's Landing, loaded up more food, and set out again, this time to 82 degrees south. This trip was harder. The temperature dropped to -40 degrees Celsius, and strong winds whipped up the snow, but they successfully established the second depot, marking it with 60 flags, and returned to base on March 23rd. As winter descended, their ship, the Viking, was gone, sailing in warmer waters near South America. They were alone on the ice. Meanwhile, Cole went with Sterling to establish the first British depot. They departed from their base, Fortitude Bay, on January 25th with 13 men, 8 ponies, and 26 dogs. The dogs were much faster than the ponies. They ran lightly on top of the snow, while the ponies' hooves sank deep into it. Each morning, the ponies started 2 hours before the dogs, yet the dogs still arrived at the campsite first. At night, the dogs dug warm holes in the snow, but the ponies had to stand exposed on the surface in the freezing -20 degrees Celsius temperatures. After 15 days, Cole spoke to Sterling during a blizzard. 3 of these ponies are ill, Captain, Cole said, his face white with frost. They can't continue. Don't be foolish, Cole, Sterling retorted. They are good, strong animals, the best ponies on Earth. Not these 3, Cole insisted. They're sick and miserable. They can barely walk. Let's kill them and leave the meat here in the snow. We can eat it, or the dogs can. Absolutely not, Sterling said angrily. These ponies are our companions. They work hard for us. I do not kill my companions. 3 days later, 2 of the ponies were dead. Sterling's team was much slower than Eriksen's. It took them 24 days to reach 80 degrees south. They made a large depot there, marking it with a single large black flag. On the way back to Fortitude Bay, disaster struck. Their camp was on an island surrounded by sea ice, which sometimes shifted and cracked. One day, 7 ponies fell through the ice into the freezing sea and perished. One of the motor sledges was also lost to the sea. Chapter 5. A long, cold winter. For 4 months, darkness covered the land. Outside the wooden house at Viking's Landing, the temperature often plunged to -60 degrees Celsius. The dogs stayed warm in their snow holes, while the men remained indoors, working in rooms they had dug under the snow. The skis and sledges were the best money could buy in Norway. But Bjorn Larsen was not satisfied. He spent the winter modifying them, reinforcing the sledges to make them stronger and adjusting the skis to make them faster. All the Norwegians worked tirelessly, caring for their dogs and perfecting their equipment. Every day, they discussed their journey to the pole, and every day, Eriksen thought about Sterling. One day in midwinter, he addressed his men. Let's start early, before Sterling, Eriksen proposed. Remember, he has more men than we do, and he has those motor sledges. Perhaps they can travel faster than us. Larson laughed. Oh no, they can't go faster than me, he boasted. On snow, nothing is faster than a good man on skis. We don't know that, Eriksen countered. You are the best skier in Norway, but you get tired, and dogs get tired. Motor sledges do not get tired. They can go all day and all night. Johan Andersen laughed angrily. That's ridiculous. The motor sledges might go all night, but the Englishmen can't. The English don't understand snow. We do, and they are too slow. Perhaps, Eriksen conceded, but I want to win this race. So, we are going to start early. Do you understand? It was quiet and warm inside Viking's Landing. Larson looked at Eriksen, thinking of the long, cold journey ahead. He could hear the wind howling over the roof. On August 24th, the sun returns, he said quietly. We start on that day. But we can't, Andersen protested, looking angry. That's too early. It's dangerous and foolish to start then. Eriksen looked at Andersen coldly. You're wrong, Johan. We want to win, remember, so we start on August 24th. At Sterling's camp at Fortitude Bay, no one spoke of Eriksen, and no one worked with the same intensity. They had good food, played football on the snow, wrote a camp newspaper called the South Polar Times, and read books. No one practiced skiing or worked on the motor sledges. Twice, men went on long journeys pulling the sledges themselves. Cole remained at Fortitude Bay, tending to his ponies. Over the winter, Sterling pinned a map of Antarctica to the wall. He drew a line from Fortitude Bay to the South Pole and placed a small British flag at the destination. Beneath the map, he wrote the date for the start of their journey. We start on November 3rd. Chapter 6, A Bad Start. On August 23rd, the Norwegian sledges were packed and ready. They brought them outside, and the dogs pulled them across the ice. The sun appeared for just half an hour, but the cold was brutal, -46°C. It was impossible to travel in such weather. They returned to Viking's Landing to wait. They waited 2 weeks. On September 8th, with the temperature at a slightly more manageable -37°C, they set out. 8 men, 7 sledges, and 86 dogs headed south, leaving only Lindstrom, the cook, behind. At first, all went well. They covered 28 kilometers on Saturday and another 28 on Sunday. It felt easy, but on Monday, the temperature plummeted to -56°C. A thick, white fog obscured their vision, but they pushed on for another 28 kilometers. That night, in their tents, they nearly froze to death. The next day, they halted and built snow houses for shelter. Inside, it was warmer, but their spirits were low. I told you, Magnus, Andersen said angrily. September is too early. We can't travel in this cold. Do you want us to die? Let's go back and wait for better weather. Eriksen was furious, both at Andersen and at himself. He knew Andersen was right. All right, he said slowly. We can continue to the depot at 80°S, leave the food there, and then turn back. We can't do more than that. It was 37 kilometers to the depot, with the wind blowing directly in their faces. 2 dogs died on the way. When they reached the depot, they didn't stop to rest. They dropped off the food, planted the flags, and immediately turned north. With the wind finally at their backs, the dogs ran swiftly, and the men rode on the empty sledges. They went faster and faster, turning the retreat into a race. Eriksen was on Wisting's sledge, and soon he, Wisting, and Hansen were several kilometers ahead of the others. They traveled 75 kilometers in 9 hours, reaching Viking's Landing at 4 o'clock that afternoon. Larson arrived 2 hours later with 2 other men, but the last pair, Andersen and Prestrud, moved much more slowly. Their dogs were exhausted, their feet were frozen, and they had no food. They stumbled back to base in the dark at midnight. with the temperature at -51 degrees Celsius. The next morning, Andersen confronted Eriksen in front of everyone. "You were wrong, Magnus. September was too early. I warned you, but you didn't listen. And then you abandoned us and we nearly died in the cold. You are a bad captain. I am a better captain than you." Eriksen was enraged but said nothing at first because he knew Andersen was right. Later that evening, he gave Andersen a letter. It read, "You are not coming to the pole with me. When I go south again, you will take some dogs and travel east to King Edward VII land with Prestrud and Stubberud. You can be the first men to go there, but not to the South Pole." The Norwegians remained at Viking's Landing and waited, listening to the wind and thinking about Stirling and his motor sledges. Chapter 7: Motor Sledges and Mountains. Captain Stirling had 2 motor sledges, the first ever used in the Antarctic. On October 24th, the motor sledges, operated by 4 men, began their journey south from Fortitude Bay. Stirling himself stayed behind for another week. Cole was pessimistic. He wrote to his mother, "We had a very difficult winter here. I do not like Stirling. We were here all winter, yet he did not learn to ski or to drive dogs. Our equipment is poor and he does not think about others. I am to sleep in his tent on the journey, but I do not want to." On November 1st, Stirling, Cole, and 6 other men left Fortitude Bay with 8 sledges and 8 ponies. The ponies struggled, their hooves sinking into the soft snow. It was exhausting work, and they could only travel 13 or 14 kilometers a day. Behind them, a man named Mears followed with a single sledge and a team of dogs. Mears was a skilled dog driver. Every day, he started 2 hours after the ponies and arrived at camp 2 hours before them. After 5 days, they found the motor sledges. The Norwegians started their journey again on October 20th. This time, there were 5 men: Eriksen, Larsen, Wisting, Hassel, and Hansen. They had 4 sledges and 48 dogs. The first day was beset by wind and fog. Suddenly, Wisting's sledge stopped, its back end sinking. "Come on, you dogs," he shouted. "Pull, pull." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the sledge moved forward. Wisting looked over the side and saw that beneath the thin layer of snow was a 50-meter-deep crevasse. "Did you see that?" Eriksen said grimly. "The ice wants to devour us men, dogs, sledges, everything." On the 4th day, they reached their depot at 80 degrees south. A fierce blizzard was raging, but thanks to their extensive flag system, they found it easily. They rested in their tents while the dogs played in their snow holes. They were all happy, with plenty of food, excellent equipment, and warm shelter. The next morning, the storm had passed. "Today, everything is wonderful," Larsen wrote in his diary. "But where is Stirling? In front of us or behind?" Back with the British party, there was no one with the motor sledges. They had broken down. Stirling looked at them angrily. "It doesn't matter," he said. "Teddy Evans and his men are ahead of us. They're good men, pulling their sledges themselves. We can reach the pole on foot." Cole watched Mears. He and the ponies were exhausted, but Mears and his dogs were thriving in their natural environment. That night, Cole wrote, 3 motor sledges at 1,000 pounds each, 19 ponies at 5 pounds each, 32 dogs at 1 pound 50 each. Well, it is not my money, it is Stirling's. On November 21st, one of the ponies died. On November 11th, the Norwegians saw the mountains. They were immense, some of the highest on Earth. Larsen smiled. "There is good skiing up there, Magnus," he said. "But can the dogs get up there too?" "Of course they can," Eriksen replied confidently. "Come on." They left Hansen with the dogs and skied a short way up the mountainside. It was a difficult climb, but the landscape was magnificent. Behind these mountains, Eriksen knew, lay a high, flat ice plateau. "That's it," he said. "That's the road to the pole. Tomorrow, we bring the dogs and sledges up. But for now, let's have a ski race. Who can get back to camp first?" They laughed and skied joyfully down the pristine white slopes. "This is like home," Larsen thought. but bigger than Norway and better. Over the next 4 days, the dogs pulled the sledges 81 kilometers, climbing 3,000 meters. At last, Eriksen and Larsen stood on the vast plateau behind the mountains. Tired, but triumphant, Larsen looked back at the towering peaks. "Can a motor sledge get up here?" he asked. Eriksen smiled. "No, I don't think so. And Sterling doesn't like dogs, so his men are going to pull their sledges up these mountains themselves. Would you like to do that, Bjorn?" Larsen didn't answer. He just smiled and skied happily away across the endless snow. Chapter 8. Cross the Plateau. On November 21st, the Norwegians killed 30 of their dogs. "They were happy," Eriksen said, "and now they will die quickly. We need 3 sledges and 18 dogs to reach the pole." The remaining dogs ate the meat, as did the men. "They were good friends," Larsen wrote in his diary, "and now they are good food." 2 days later, with the dogs well fed, they resumed their journey in a snowstorm. After the storm came a dense fog, and they found themselves lost on a treacherous ice river filled with hundreds of deep crevices. They could see nothing, and the danger was extreme. In 4 days, they advanced only 9 kilometers. "But the ice is beautiful," Larsen wrote. "Blue and green and white. This is a wonderful place, but I don't want to stay here long." After the ice river, they faced powerful winds and more blizzards, but they pressed on, covering 25 or 30 kilometers each day. Then, on December 9th, the sun came out. They were at 88 degrees and 23 minutes south, just 175 kilometers from the pole. 5 more long days, Larsen wrote. "That's all. But where is Sterling?" For 4 days, Sterling's men were trapped in their tents near the mountains by a terrible blizzard. "It's too cold for the ponies," Cole wrote, "and our clothes and skis are terrible." On December 9th, Cole killed the last of the ponies. They were exhausted and sick, unable to climb to the plateau. Then, Mears and his dogs turned back to Fortitude Bay. "We can pull the sledges ourselves," Sterling declared. "We can do it. We are all strong men." There were 2 sledges and 8 men. They managed 24 kilometers a day. On December 31st, Scott gave an order to Teddy Evans and the men on the second sledge. "You can't ski well. Leave your skis here." So they pulled their sledge for 24 kilometers without skis. The next day, Sterling went to Evans's tent. "You are ill, Teddy," he said. "You cannot come to the pole. Take 2 men and go back tomorrow." Evans was devastated. "2 men, Captain? Why not 3? "Because Bowers is coming with me," Sterling said. "He is strong. We need him." "But you have food on your sledge for 4 men, not 5, Evans pointed out. "And Bowers has no skis." "I am the captain, Teddy," Sterling said firmly. "You will do as I say. Take 2 men and leave Bowers with me." Cole wrote to his mother, "I am going to the pole with Sterling. I am pleased and feel strong." But in his private diary, he wrote, "My feet are very bad. They are always wet now, and they do not look good." On January 4th, Sterling's party of 5 Sterling, Cole, Wilson, Edgar Evans, and the skiless Bowers left Teddy Evans and pushed onward. They were 270 kilometers from the pole. December 14th, 1911, was a warm, sunny day. 5 Norwegians skied over the beautiful white snow. The world was silent. They were all excited, happy. 6 more kilometers, Larsen thought. "Is there a British flag?" "I can't see a flag." "But look," Hassel said. "What's that over there?" Larsen left his sledge and skied quickly ahead. "What is it?" he wondered. "Is it no? It's nothing. There's nothing there," he called back. "Nothing." 3 kilometers. 2. Magnus Hansen called to Eriksen. "Go in front of me, please. It helps my dogs." That's not true, Larsen thought. His dogs are running well. Hansen just wants Eriksen to be first. The first man at the South Pole. They skied on and on. "Stop," Eriksen said. He waited for his men to gather around him. "This is it." Larsen looked around, but there's nothing here. Eriksen smiled. "Oh, yes there is," he said. "There is something very important here, Bjorn. Very, very important. What's that, Magnus? We're here now. Isn't that important, Bjorn? The four men stood on the snow and stared at him. Then, slowly, they all began to laugh. Chapter 9. The end of the race. The Norwegians stayed at the pole for 2 days. They erected a small tent with a Norwegian flag on top. Inside, they left some food, a letter for the King of Norway, and a letter for Captain Sterling. They planted more black flags in the vicinity and then, on December 17th, they started their journey north. It's a beautiful day, Larsen wrote. The sun is warm, the snow is good, but the dogs run too quickly. I can't get in front of them. They found their depots with ease. There were 10 caches of food between the pole and Vikings Landing. They laughed and skied swiftly down the mountains, often covering 50 kilometers in a single day. On Friday, January 26, 1912, at 4 in the morning, they arrived back at Vikings Landing. Inside the wooden house, Lindstrom the cook was fast asleep. Eriksen walked quietly to his bed. "Good morning, Lindstrom," he said. "Is our coffee ready?" The black flags waited at the pole. "What's that, Captain?" Bowers said, pointing. "Over there." "Where?" Sterling asked. "What, oh my God!" They all saw it, a small black flag fluttering in the snow, 2 kilometers ahead. Slowly, they dragged their sledge towards it. The next day, January 17th, 1912, they found the tent and the Norwegian flag. Sterling took the British flag from under his clothes and planted it nearby. In his diary, Sterling wrote, "This is a very bad day. We are all tired and have cold feet and hands. It is minus 30 degrees Celsius, and there is a snowstorm. Great God, this is an awful place." They turned north. 5 tired, unhappy men in the coldest, emptiest place on earth. On March 13th, 1912, Sterling's wife, Kathleen, read her morning newspaper in England. The headline was Norway's flag at South Pole. She stared at it for a long time, and then she began to cry. "What's the matter?" her friend asked. "My poor, poor husband, Mrs." Sterling wept. "What's happened to him? Where is he now?" Sterling's men were constantly hungry. Their depots were few and hard to locate. "We need to find the next depot today," Cole wrote. "But how can we find one black flag in all the snow? It's very difficult. And there is food for 4 men, not 5. They were all tired and sick. Cole's feet were now black with frostbite, and he could no longer feel them. On February 16th, Edgar Evans died. On the 17th, they were past the mountains. At the depot there, they ate one of the dead ponies they had left months before. Then they struggled on, making only 10, 11, or 12 kilometers a day. They were ill, their clothes provided little warmth, and they had barely enough food. The temperature sometimes dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius. On March 7th, Sterling looked at Cole's feet. They were swollen and black. "I can't pull the sledge now," Cole said. "It's very difficult to walk. Am I going to lose these feet, Captain?" Sterling looked at Cole's feet and said nothing. On March 9th, they found another depot, but there was not much food. Slowly, they walked on. Cole's condition worsened daily. March 17th was his 32nd birthday. He lay in the tent, listening to the wind, feeling deeply cold, hungry, and exhausted. He wrote a letter to his mother and gave it to Wilson. Then he got up and opened the door of the tent. He paused in the entrance. Sterling, Wilson, and Bowers looked at him, saying nothing. "I'm just going outside," Cole said. "I may be some time." They never saw him again. Back at Fortitude Bay, the Englishmen waited. On December 11th, Mears and the dogs returned. On January 3rd, Teddy Evans and his 2 men arrived. The ship, the Odyssey, came and went. Winter began again. Sterling did not return. The remaining men waited all winter. Then, on October 26, 1912, they started south. 2 weeks later, they found a tent. Inside were 3 bodies, Sterling, Wilson, and Bowers. They buried the men under the snow, collected their letters and diaries, and returned north. In Sterling's diary, they read, Cole died like a true English gentleman. We all did. Please remember us and look after our families. We did our best. No one ever found Lawrence Cole's body, but he is out there, somewhere, under the snow and the wind, in the coldest, emptiest place on earth.